Hi again, class. So, yung last method, this is a continuation about water microbiology. The last method in evaluating the microbiological quality of water is multiple tube fermentation technique. So, this pre-recorded lecture is about multiple tube fermentation technique. So the principle in your multiple tube fermentation technique is through serial dilution. So this is just a lab joke or humor. Why on earth are you pouring cornflakes in water? Didn't you tell me to prepare serial dilution? So very literal, but then this makes sense. So the just to let you remember that the principle in multiple tube fermentation technique is serial dilution. So ano ba yung serial dilution? In here series of dilutions are done to estimate the concentration or amount of colonies in a water sample. So, magka-increase yung dilution until magka-decrease din yung concentration of bacteria for it to be enumerated quantitatively. So, that is the principle of multiple tube fermentation technique. So, from the word itself, multiple tubes, so maraming tubes ang magagamit dito. So, the coliform bacteria consists of several genera of bacteria belonging to the family Enterobacteriaceae. This has been used to indicate the pollution of water with waste and thus the suitability of a particular water supply for domestic and dietetic uses. Multiple tube fermentation technique class is also applicable to the analysis of salt or brackish water, mud, sediments, and sludges. So, ito yung sinasabi ko na wastewater and recreational waters. The coliform group includes all the aerobic and facultative anaerobes. These are your gram-negative, non-spore forming, rod shape, or gram-negative bacilli, which ferment lactose with gas formation within 48 hours at 35 degrees Celsius. So the result of the examination of replicate tubes and dilutions are reported in terms of most probable number of organisms present. So again, it is reported as most probable number per 100 ml of sample. This number, based on certain probability formulas, is an estimate. So estimate lang to of the mean density of coliforms in the sample. So let's go back with the temperature. Pag total coliform, 35 degrees Celsius at 24 to 48 hours. And for fecal coliforms, that's 44.5 degrees Celsius at 24 hours. So remember the temperature and the time for this specific coliforms. Yung membrane filtration technique lang, yung 24 hours. Okay? But then, total coliform and fecal coliform has different temperature requirement. Apparatus. So let's start already with the procedure proper. We need a water bath again, an incubator set at 44.5 degrees Celsius for fecal coliforms, an incubator set at 35 degrees Celsius for total coliforms. So again, we can use a dry incubator or this one for your fecal coliforms as long as it is set at 44.5 degrees Celsius. But water bath is preferable to use for fecal coliforms, which are set at 44.5 degree Celsius. So I have already discussed why in my separate pre-recorded lecture. So next, we need sterile to deliver glass pipettes. So this time, matitest talaga yung ability or skill mo sa pagpapipette. So we need sterile to deliver glass pipettes and alcohol lamp or Bunsen burner and bacticinerator. These are optional. We need bacticinerator especially if we already process inside the biosafety cabinet. Alcohol lamp are should not be brought inside a biosafety cabinet class because it can destroy the HEPA filter. I'm sorry. Next is, of course, you need test tube racks and sterile inoculating loop or wooden applicator sticks. Just remember the apparatus. And then we need lauryl sulfate broth, culture media. These are your prepared broth. We need 50 lauryl sulfate broth tubes per sample if wastewater or non-potable water. But for drinking water, we only need 5 lauryl sulfate broth tubes because in drinking water, we do not need to do dilution. Okay? Di na kailangan mag-dilute kasi nga low density of bacteria lang. But for wastewater and recreational water, due to higher density of bacteria, we need to do or to perform series of dilution. So that's the reason why we're able to come up 50 lauryl sulfate broth tubes per sample. So imagine that class, okay? And then we need EC broth or the E. coli broth and BGLB for your total coliform and fecal coliform confirmatory testing. So this is your BGLB, the brilliant green lactose broth, and the EC broth. Okay. So we need lighter or matchsticks, of course, and then 0.1% of peptone water. That is your dilution water. Of course, para lang siya sa wastewater or non-potable water. Kasi nga sa drinking water, we do not do dilution or perform series of dilution. Of course, we need autoclave again by safety cabinet class 2. And okay, already start with the procedure. So first, you shake water sample 25 times. Again, and then you pipette 10 ml of the water sample into each of the 5 tubes. So this is only for drinking water class, ha? Imagine my 5 tubes of lauryl tryptose broth, prepared lauryl tryptose broth, and you pipette the 10 ml of the water sample into each of the five tubes. So if you are asking how much is the volume of the lauryl tryptose broth, again, I already discussed this in my pre-recorded lecture about culture media preparation. There is a tabulation on the specific preparation of lauryl sulfate broth in a non-potable water and potable water. So, nandun yung specific concentration as well as the volume in the preparation. So, you pipette 10 ml of the water sample into each of the 5 tubes of LTB or LSB. And after that, after pipetting, you incubate it at 24, I mean at 35 degrees Celsius for 24 to 48 hours. That's for total coliforms. And then pag fecal coliforms, i-incubate mo at 44.5 degrees Celsius from 24 hours to 48 hours. I'm sorry, rather 24 hours lang. Okay? Again, pag total coliforms, i-incubate natin at 35 degrees Celsius for 24 to 48 hours. At pag fecal coliform, incubate at 44.5 degrees Celsius at 24 hours. Bakit 24 to 48 hours yung mga total coliforms? Because if negative siya sa 24 hours, i-extend natin ng another 24 hours to make it a total of making it a total of 48 hours. This is to give chances for late lactose fermenters. Okay? So we will go over, this is for your wastewater. This is the time we already perform series of dilution. These are for high density amount of bacteria in wastewater and recreational water. So first, this is your water sample. You pipette 10 ml of your water sample into the 5 lauryl sulfate broth tubes, and then you transfer 11 ml into your peptone water. Of course, you will need here 9 peptone water and 50 lauryl sulfate broth. So again, 10 ml yung ipapipette natin sa 5 lauryl sulfate broth. And then you pipette another 11 ml doon sa peptone water. And then you shake it properly or vigorously to ensure even distribution of bacteria. And then iset aside muna natin si peptone water. After that, From this peptone water, set aside na natin si sample. From this peptone water, you get or you pipette 10 ml and transfer it to another 5 lauryl sulfate broth. Okay? And then, ang 11 ml naman dito, transfer na din natin dito sa another peptone water. And so, the procedure or the process is repeated until the end. Okay? So, again, 10 ml from this peptone water to another 5 lauryl sulfate broth. And in here, 11 ml naman transfer natin dito. So always remember, from sample to peptone water and to another peptone water, that's always 11 ml. But from the sample to the lauryl sulfate broth or from the peptone to lauryl sulfate broth, that is 10 ml. So I hope you get the process. Again, domino lang siya class. From the sample, you transfer 11 ml to peptone water, then 10 ml to their respective lauryl sulfate broth. Dito naman, transfer again 11 ml, tapos 10 ml from this peptone to another set of 5 lauryl sulfate broth. And then the process goes on and on until we finish until the ninth peptone water. And that is your last dilution. So if you notice, nag-increase yung dilution, nagka-decrease yung amount of inoculum or the inoculum, or that's the amount of bacteria. So from 1 to 0.1 until sa mas bumaba na yung concentration of bacteria. And this time, it can be easily enumerated already quantitatively. So again, this is for your wastewater and recreational water. Again, 50, all in all, 50 yung lauryl sulfate broth. Let's count 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. Yung lauryl sulfate broth, peptone water, that's total of 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay? So this is the series of dilution performed in your wastewater and recreational water. So yung dilution is inversely proportional to the amount of bacteria or to the inoculum. So magka-increase ang dilution, magka-decrease ang concentration of bacteria. So, again, 100 ml of sample volume and 0.1% yung peptone water. So, this is the time class na dapat prepared talaga yung lahat ng culture media and reagents. Because imagine, during the analysis, that's the time you have to prepare. So, murag lisod na jud kayo siya. Okay? So, of course, in here, yung 11 ml, wala naman because the dilution is only until 10 times 10 raised to the power of 8. That's the last dilution. So, pag naabot na natin sa 9th peptone water, you already throw the last 11 ml. I-discard na natin. Okay? So, I hope this is clear. Let's proceed. So, after the procedure, you incubate again. So, ito na. Sinabi ko na to kanina, incubate at 35 degrees Celsius for 24 hours. That is for your total coliform. And then observe at the end of 24 hours and record the presence or absence of gas. So this is how it looks like if there is a gas production. This is positive. And this is negative for gas production. So meaning walang coliform dito. This is negative for total and fecal coliform. Again, yung LSB class, it's presumptive test. It can detect both total and fecal coliform in general kasi nga presumptive pa. This is the positive result for your fecal coliform and total coliform. There is a gas production and also it ferments lactose. For this negative result, i-further incubate pa natin siya for another 24 hours. So, making it a total of 48 hours. So, this is only for your total coliform class and the presumptive test. Okay? So, again, yung negative result, i-further incubate natin for another 24 hours. And after the another 24 hours or the 48 hour already, if it is still like this or negative from gas production, that is really negative from total coliform and fecal coliform. But then, if in the 48 hour, it already tested positive or there is already presence of gas production that is said to be positive with coliform. So, nasa presumptive test pa tayo ha. So, this one, if, how about this? This is really an indication of the production of gas, yung letter B. Letter A class is, it appears turbid and there is a change in the clarity, so it appears turbid. But then if you notice, walang gas production. By the way, class, when you prepare the culture tubes, may naka-insert na inverted vial or the Durham tubes. That is for the gas production, to facilitate gas production. So if you notice dito, yung Durham tube, walang gas production, though nagtuturbid yung sample, this is still negative for the coliform bacteria. This one, obvious yung gas production, and also letter C, that is positive for coliform bacteria. So this one, ito, very clear. So this is an actual picture. Examine for gas formation after 48 hours. So for presumptive test, in your lauryl sulfate broth, you extend it until mag 48 hours siya if negative. So that's from 24 to 48 hours. But of course, if positive na siya during 24 hours, that is already recorded and you have to discard already. Okay? For the confirmatory test, we use two broth, the BGLB, this are liquid type ha kasi broth, brilliant green lactose broth, and the E. coli broth. So still the same, you gently shake or mix the water sample to resuspend the organism. And then when you do what you call this, confirmation, it is advisable that you process it inside the biosafety cabinet kasi nga nagpa-positive na yung sample. Using a sterile wire loop or it could be also a sterile applicator stick, you transfer one or more loop full of medium to the BGLB, brilliant green lactose broth, or easy broth tubes. Okay? And then you mix and dip to at least 2.5 cm into the medium. So again, from the LSB, yung mga nag-positive after 24 to 48 hours na culture tubes, we have to transfer one or more loop full of medium to brilliant green lactose broth and to easy broth kasi nasa confirmatory na tayo. To confirm total coliform in BGLP and fecal coliform in your easy broth. Okay? And then you mix and then you incubate it after at 35 degrees Celsius. So dito na pumapasok 35 degrees Celsius for 24 to 48 hours for your BGLB. Kasi in your total coliform, again 35 degrees Celsius pa rin for 24 hours. But if negative sa 24 hours, i-further incubate natin with to another 24 hours, making it a total of 48 hours. So the same lang siya kay LSB. But for EC, for your fecal coliform, you incubate it for 24 hours within you incubate it for 24 hours at 44.5 degrees Celsius. So everything class, incubate mo within 30 minutes after ka nag-inoculate or planting. Di pwede na nag-inoculate ka, then standby sa mo for 1 hour, 40 minutes. So it might be contaminated. Within 30 minutes dapat naka-incubate na siya, okay? So again, huwag malito class. For total coliform, that is 35 degrees Celsius good na. Fecal coliform, 44.5 degrees Celsius. Yung E. coli specific detection sa membrane filtration technique, that's the time na first, biphasic yung temperature requirement. First is there is this temperature acclimation. That's what it is called. First kasi it needs 35 degrees Celsius for 2 hours to rejuvenate stress bacteria, and then we extend it at 44.5 degrees Celsius for 22 hours. Okay? But then, for your multiple tube fermentation technique, yung LSB at BGLB are the same. 35 degrees Celsius kasi nga total coliform sila. But for 24 and 248 hours, meaning you have to extend to another 24 hours if negative siya on the first 24 hour. Okay? I hope this is clear. And for EC broth, meaning for fecal coliform confirmation, that should be in a water bath at 44.5 degrees Celsius for 24 hours only. Meaning if negative siya sa 24 hours, negative na talaga yan. We do not need to extend. Okay? Again, LSB, presumptive test, it can detect both total and fecal coliforms. So, hindi pa natin alam kung ano nagpa-positive, fecal ba yan or total coliform. That's why we have to do confirmatory testing. BGLB is the confirmatory testing for total coliform, and your EC broth is the confirmatory testing for fecal coliform. Lastly, after incubation, still the same, we examine for gas production after 24 hours. Incubate for another 24 hours if no gas has developed. So, I already discussed this. Like this one class, itong nasa center, if you notice, this is the original. This is negative, Jude, very negative. This is the positive. May gas production. Yung nasa center, there is it is positive for bacteria obviously kasi may change in color, but then it is not a coliform bacteria. This is negative for coliforms, so it should be reported as negative, or else pwede natin to i-continue for another 24 hours para malaman natin meron ba talagang gas production. But if after 48 hours ganito pa rin, that is reported as negative. Dapat ganito jud siya na gas production. Same with your EC broth. So, this is the summary of the procedure. Wag malito, from lauryl sulfate broth, this is the presumptive test. You confirm it to brilliant green lactose broth for total coliforms and EC broth for fecal coliforms. So, mga temperature requirement, wag kalimutan. For LSB, 35 degrees Celsius from 24 to 48 hours kasi may extend. For BGLB, 24 to 48 hours pa rin at 35 degrees Celsius. Yung EC broth, 44.5 degrees Celsius lang at 44.5 degrees Celsius at 24 hours lang. Okay? So, ito yung summary. I will not discuss this. I already mentioned this. So, this is just the flow chart of the procedure. So, ito yung presumptive test. This one is your confirmatory test. This one is the completed test. The third step in multiple tube fermentation technique is the completed test. First is yung presumptive, followed by confirmatory test. Then third, yung completed test. In your completed test, you perform gram staining. But then DOH only requires until confirmatory test. So, until confirmatory test, enough na siya to provide information of the result. Okay? So how do we interpret the results quantitatively? So again, just a quick recall. Ito yung positive result at ito yung negative result. Okay? This one is positive at ito negative pa rin to. Okay, even though there is a change in clarity, these two first and second tubes are reported as negative kasi walang gas production. So formation of gas within 48 hours in any amount in the inner vial constitutes a positive presumptive test. The appearance of a bubble, this is what I mentioned in my previous pre-recorded lecture. I guess that is in the culture media preparation. Pag may appearance of bubble during the preparation of culture media, it should be discarded so that it must not be confused with actual gas production. Okay? So I will not discuss this already. That is why, this is what I mentioned as well, an arbitrary limit of 48 hour for total coliform and is even in LSB na presumptive test is given to give chances for slow gas forming organism as well as for late lactose fermenters na organism. Gas production in a fermentation tube within 24 hours or less is considered as positive reaction. So this is for EC broth, 24 hours lang hanggang 24 hours. Pag negative, negative na jud. Positive, positive. You do not need to continue the same with BGLB and LSB. So table reading, this is already how you report the results quantitatively. So this is it's reported through most probable number per 100 ml. That's the unit. This is an estimation of bacterial density in a sample of waste water and recreational water or drinking water. So again, estimation. So this is how you report. This is for drinking water. Very easy, class. If walang positive out of the 5 tubes, that's reported as less than 1.1 mpn per 100 ml or mpn index per 100 ml. If isang tube lang, that's 1.1 mpn per 100 ml. If dalawang tube, that's 2.6 per 100 ml, and so on and so forth. But then, according to the Philippine National Standards for Drinking Water, the standard value for it to pass dapat less than 1.1 mpn per 100 ml. So if you notice, sa multiple tube, it's less than 1.1. Sa membrane filtration technique, that's less than 1.0 per colony forming unit per 100 ml. So sa multiple tube, less than 1.1 mpn per 100 ml. Again, we always follow the normal values or standard values from the Philippine National Standards of Drinking Water. So this is the tabulation of values for your multiple tube fermentation technique. I hope I can discuss this thoroughly. No, this is really kanang medyo confusing ni nga part, but I'll just give you a brief na overview on how to report. You always report the results from the only three of these are used in the computing the MPN. So that is the last three dilutions. So di ba yung dilutions natin is more than 3 naman. That's until 10 raised to the power of negative 8. So the last three dilutions of the results will be used in computing the most probable number value. Okay? So these are the rules in reporting the most probable number values in your wastewater and recreational water. Do not worry, just do not take this seriously. These are the specific rules manjud by the book. Okay? But to summarize, all of this is always the last three dilutions. So I'll just give examples para masabtan ninyo ang pag-report. Okay, let's proceed lang sa examples. You may read this. Anyway, these are self-explanatory man pod. These are the specific rules and guidelines. We call this as combination of positive guidelines. The last three dilutions na ginagamit, yun yung i-report. Okay? So this is how you calculate. That's the MPN value of combination of positives divided by the amount of sample times the amount of inoculum divided by the last dilution of the three representative positive samples. So I'll just give an example because I know nalito na kayo in reporting. So this is also the challenging part in multiple tube fermentation technique, no? I have handled trainings like even mga professionals now, or even I from the start, really find this confusing because of the specific rules and guidelines. But anyway, it's always really the last three positives lang na dilution. So this is the tabulation of result. This is an example, actual raw data. So for example, this one, 10. So yung first, if na-picture nyo, wala pang dilution na nangyayari dito. So ito yung from the sample, you transfer 10 ml of sample to 5 lauryl sulfate broth tubes and then 11 ml to the first peptone water. So wala pang dilution na nangyayari. And after, this is the first dilution. This is 10 raised to the power of 1. This one is 10 raised to the power of negative 1. And then down to 10 raised to the power of negative 8. So if you notice, there are 8 dilutions in the method. Okay? And then if in 24 hours, nagpa-positive lahat, that's 5 plus. So in the first, di ba merong 5 lauryl sulfate broth, report it as 5 plus. Second, 5 plus pa rin. Same with third, fourth, until the last. Okay? If you notice zero dito, meaning walang positive result. Lahat negative. So, if you notice itong mga zero, i-continue natin for another 24 hours. to see if there is still growth. So if you notice itong 0, pag another 24 hours, nagto 2 plus siya. Ito from 3 plus, meaning may dalawa pa na negative, i-continue din natin. Out of the 2, merong nag 1 plus during the another 24 hours. So, all of the positive, yung positive lang yung i-inoculate natin for confirmatory testing. So, again, confirmatory sa Brilla total coliform, and for EC, that's your fecal coliform. So, kunin natin yung last three positives na dilution. So, dito, yung last three positive is these three dilutions. That's 5, 3, 1. Okay? For EC broth, itong last three dilutions is 5, 4, 2. Mga last na nag-positive. Then we go back sa table. Ang layo na. It's so far. Wait for a while. 5, 3, 1, and 5, 4, 2. Let's see. This is 541. That's 170. Okay? I mean, 542. That's 220. Yung 531 na lang tayo. That's 110. So, again, ito ha. 531, that's 110. So, let's use the formula in computing. If you have your calculator with you, you can compute with me. This is the formula. So the MPN value, for example, yung i-compute na, we compute individually, we compute for Brilla, and we compute for EC. No need to compute for LSB. This is just the presumptive. Yung i-compute na natin yung Brilla at EC broth. For the Brilla, again, 531 is equal to 110. So ito, the numerator here, the MPN value of combination of positives is equal to 110. This is the last three positive dilutions. Divided by 100 ml of sample times amount of inoculum, that's 10 kasi 10 yung linalagay natin sa LSB, and then the last dilution of the three representative positive samples. So yung three representative positive samples are these three, for example, and that is equal to 0.00001, or that's 10 raised to the power of negative 5. So dito dapat 10 raised to the power of negative 5, and then you compute. So, yung answer will be 110 divided by 100 times 10 divided by 0.00001, or 10 raised to the power of negative 5. The answer is 1,100,000 MPN per 100 ml. But then we have to convert it to scientific notation into two significant figures. That's 1.1 times 10 raised to the power of ilan? 6. Okay? That's 1.1 times 10 raised to the power of 6. I mean, sorry, 1.10, 1.1 times 10 raised to the power of 6. Okay? So that's the correct answer. 1.1 times 10 raised to the power of 6 MPN, or most probable number per 100 ml. So this is another example. These are the last three positives. So, for example, class, may na-skip na 0, for example. So, you just have to add, okay? Anyway, do not go deeper on this. You will be able to learn this in the actual setting if you'll be able to work in a water lab. I wish I can really discuss thoroughly with these examples, no? This is really best explained and discussed in the actual setting if we have a lab demonstration or actual setup or processes. So always remember lang, it's always the last three dilutions. For example, may na-skip, nag-negative dito, and then dito na nag-positive, you cannot also report 530 kasi hindi pwede i-neglect si 1. So that will be 531. Okay? So for this one, this is easy broth, and this one is the Brilla broth. So always compute it separately. Separate lang. Anyway, if naka sa actual setting, this is just a tabulation of the raw data. So i-tabulate mo lang lahat ng positive results and negative results. Again, from the LSB, yung mga positive, you confirm it in your Brilla for total coliform confirmation, and EC for fecal coliform confirmation. And then, the last three positives, you refer to the table I'm showing earlier. and then you use the formula in computing. Okay? So these are the standard values for drinking water. Again, from the PNSDW, it should be less than 1.1 mpn per 100 ml for both total and fecal coliform. And these are the accepted method of analysis, multiple tube fermentation technique. Also, I already showed in your membrane filtration technique discussion yung mga accepted methods of analysis, pwede din membrane filtration technique. And pwede din yung multiple tube fermentation technique. Kaso nga, because of a lot of preparation, mas less yung preparation ng membrane filtration technique, so mas maganda siyang gamitin in drinking or potable water. But always remember class ha, 5 tubes lang yung potable water or drinking water. Yung gumagamit ng 50 tubes, that's your wastewater. Okay? For the wastewater and recreational water, the ENR does not release standard values. Sila lang yung sila yung nagre-regulate in the regulation, sila na yung nag-i-evaluate. The establishment just have to pass the result and si DENR na yung nag-i-evaluate. Okay? So, yung Philippine National Standards for Drinking Water are limited for drinking water only. So these are the references again. That's all about multiple tube fermentation technique. Just remember the basic class, yung temperature requirement, yung time, yung culture media na ginagamit, and the methods, the principle of the methods as well. So that's all again about multiple tube fermentation technique. Thank you so much for listening. That's all about water microbiology. Have a great day, everyone.